Hello and welcome to an in-depth analysis of The Hunger Games by Gary Ross. So let's just jump right into it. Director Gary Ross. Some other noteworthy films would include Seabiscuit, Ocean's 8, Free State of Jones, and Pleasantville, all of which have either won awards or been nominated for awards, which is awesome. I know Seabiscuit won um, some award, and then Hunger Games actually won the BAFTA award for Best Feature Film back in 2012, which was really cool. Out of those movies, Ocean's 8 has to be my favorite. I love that plot and just that whole team of women powering up together. I thought that was really cool. So moving on to cast, we have, let me move my box here, Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, Amanda Listenberg, Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks, Alexander Ludwig, and Willow Shields. I wanted to pick people that were of course main characters, but then also people that really drove the plot forward. So I picked out, Rue, Prim, and Kato, who I'll talk about later as well. But I love Elizabeth Banks' performance as Effie. Just the makeup and the hair is so iconic in the book, and it's like they just really did a great job of pulling that off with her. She did an amazing job, and then this whole cast, amazing casting selection. I think they all represent, how they're described in the book, so I like it. Moving on to source material, this is best off of the New York Times bestseller Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins in 2008. She actually found inspiration after discovering the Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, where the Minos had, as punishment, had to sacrifice 7 maidens and 7 children to the Minotaur. That, along with reality TV shows like Big Brother, where the last man standing, wins a prize. So with those two concepts, and I'm sure others, but the ones that we found, she kind of developed the Hunger Games, and I love the dystopian twist that she did on it with the whole just factions of people, the districts and what they do, which I love that idea. So moving on to plot overview, I'll just go through it pretty quickly. The dystopian future of North America has turned into a society of districts that produce and maintain one major resource. So, for instance, District 12 does coal, and I know another district does wheat. So that's pretty cool. And then, in order to control overpopulation, the government has created a system of games in which 24 competitors, 2 from each district, enter an arena to fight to the death. Katniss, the teenage girl from the poorest district, District 12, has a talent for the bow and arrow. After her little sister Prim is picked for the Hunger Games, she volunteers as tribute, and thereby taking her sister's place and entering into the candidates that will play in this year's Hunger Games. My little note with that is I do say talent with the bow and arrow because she's talented, but I do think that the movie does a great job of showing there's borders along their district that you're not allowed to go out of, and she goes outside of those borders to practice with her bow and arrow with her love interest Gale at the time. So we do see her putting in work with it, but she just has a natural niche for it. So talent, skill, profession, whatever you want to label it, she's great with it. So after she volunteers, she's leaving her family and her love interest behind in District 12. But she isn't alone, as the male counterpart Peeta Mellark joins her. And through the tests and trials, she starts captivating the audiences of the rich districts, which is mainly Districts 1 and 2. But some of the higher ups, as the districts go down, they get more and more poor. So this is important because Haymitch mentions that they need to get sponsors. Throughout the game, sponsors can send them health packages or med kits, whatever they might need in order, or food, because these can go on for days, weeks. So yes. Anyways, we wanted to kind of leave the plot overview there because that's kind of self-explanatory what happens after that, which is basically the games. And so it's a whole bunch of fighting, and if we want to get into spoiler alerts, spoiler alert warning, Katniss and Peeta do make it to the end, and Katniss is one little thing of, punch in the face, a big middle finger to not only the game maker and the people watching, but to President Snow for allowing such a violent system to take place, is threatening to kill herself and Peeta with poison berries, and this is how they both make it out. So that is basically the plot. Moving on to themes, we have heroism, sacrifice, and violence. So heroism, I think you could relate this to a bunch of different ones, but Katniss is just the main. She is the main character, so the iconic hero of the story. Tying in with sacrifice and being a hero has to be selfless. So if we take that with her literally sacrificing herself, for her sister Prim, or in the games with Rue, she is basically putting her life on the line to protect others. And then even at the end, she would rather kill herself instead of Peeta. So that relates into her true heroism and her just adaptability and awareness of the situation she's in. And then violence was probably the major theme. I mean, the idea that, the society will put teenagers and kids into this system of an arena and fighting it out is just crazy on its own. And violent. So, but then aside from that, the actual games are the most violent thing ever. Just stabbing, spears, bow and arrows, hunting, like everything is just violent about it. So then relating this, we found some other themes common would be the Trojan War, where the Greeks were battling to accomplish their one goal of being the last man standing. So if you look at everyone as being Greeks, they all have this one goal, and so that is to be the last one standing to survive. And then also we related to Zeus and Kronos, how Katniss defeating President Snow relates to Zeus overthrowing the higher power of Kronos. While in the first movie / book, Katniss doesn't actually defeat President Snow yet, we do see the turning point of how this girl from District 12, who really should be no problem, no worries to anyone, is making a big change and starts getting this big, like, almost revolt coming that comes in the later movies. But we do see President Snow being agitated from the get-go with this girl. So that is probably the biggest way that we kind of saw how Zeus started to go for Kronos, and then just as Katniss is starting to go for President Snow, and then ultimately they both end up, Zeus and Katniss end up victorious. So we kind of related that into themes as well. And then our overall assessment, I'll just read mine really quick. The movie was a little longer than necessary in my opinion, but it was suspenseful, action-packed, and I like that it provided a taste of modern Greek tragedy themes. That was really cool. My favorite assessment, my point, was the names of certain characters alone reminded me of people that I would be reading about joining Jason and the Argonauts on their mission. Like Cato, he's my favorite. He's literally bred and born to be a warrior in battle, and his name is really cool, and I was sad that he had to die, but it's always the good ones, even though he's evil, but we're not going to talk about that. So I did read the book first, and we all know that books are always better, but it was very exciting because I read this while I was in junior high. So when I saw it come to screen, it was just like, whoa, like it does follow the book very, very closely. And the casting, like I said, is immaculate. It's on point. So I did really like this movie. I do think that there were tiny details in the book that I would have for sure have seen made to the screen, just to drive it home a little more. But overall, a great film, great casting, great directing. So yes, this is me and Deontay's The Hunger Games in-depth analysis.